Gaze reading where the greats drop by. Trendy authors tell us all the who, what, and why. Anyone can listen, cause we're spoiler free. Gaze reading, from Pulitzer stars to book club picks, where the curious minds can get their fix. So you say you're not gay, well that's okay. There's something for everyone. Gaze reading.
Hey there, welcome to Gaze Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman. And before we get started today, I just wanted to acknowledge the moment of time that we're living in. This episode is airing on January 27th, 2026. And for many of us, the world feels heavy. There is violence that we can't make sense of. There's harm happening to families and communities and fear and uncertainty. I mean, particularly for immigrants that are across the country. I'm struggling to sleep at night. I'm sure all of you are too. When I feel like this, I try to remind myself that attention and care still matter. A place to start is maybe looking for community-led organizations, looking for immigrant-led organizations in your own community, mutual aid groups, legal defense funds, advocacy organizations, folks that are doing the real on-the-ground work who could use our support, whether that's time or resources or amplification. There are lots of folks sharing things on social media, and that's obviously a terrific place to start. So I just encourage all of us to do that, and it can help feel like we're doing something. Yeah. Reading, I know, has been another way that I stay present instead of shutting down, even though it has been very, very hard for me to focus on reading. It feels hard to pay attention to a story that might feel irrelevant right now. But I know that stories also help me feel less alone. They remind me that staying connected and building a community around stories means something. And so it's what we got right now. And you're not alone. And I know I'm not alone. And I'm grateful for you being here. And I'm grateful to our guest. Today we have the incomparable George Saunders. He's here to talk about his new book, Vigil. It's fascinating that this is the book that we're talking about today. There's a lot about what it means to be human, all in and around Vigil. So that's interesting. Anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting Gaze Reading. To learn more, if you're unfamiliar, check out our website, gazereading.com. We're on Instagram at Gaze Reading. And it feels weird promoting the show right now. But it's how we keep going. It's how we stay connected. And I have some very small semblance of a platform. And so here we are. Anyway, I appreciate you. And I appreciate George Saunders. And yeah, thanks y'all. Enjoy my conversation with the one and only George Saunders. In case some good things happen. Because then I could say, thank you for being here. And that's public record.
Okay, we have that on the record.
But to publicly thank you for being here.
Yeah.
George Saunders, welcome to Gaze Reading. How are you doing today? I can't even stand it.
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, see, you've already said thank you for having me, but now it's public record.
Right. Now we can't go back. We're in.
You know what? At first I thought the shades behind you was a piece of art, but
It could be, Jason. You know what I mean? It's all kind of,
art is
fluid.
relative.
Yeah,
it's subjective.
No, it's definitely a shade. It's definitely a shade. And if I turn it on, I'll look like I'm speaking to you from the gates of heaven because a blast of light comes in. So
listen, it's very on brand. Just the shot. Imagine if you did all of your interviews with a blast of light coming behind you.
That would be. And I would never mention it. It would just be like, no, I don't see it. I don't know. It must just be self-emanating.
I know, so ethereal. Where did that come from? So funny.
Even in grade school, I had the blast of light behind me, so I could never play sports because of the blast of light. It was
That's what an excuse.
yeah.
Mine is because I was gay and fat and lazy.
I don't believe the fat or lazy.
Like, but you're definitely a homosexual. That I believe.
Amen. Amen.
No, I was so desperate to get out of my PE credit in high school that when I learned that you could take first aid as a PE credit, not only was that my PE credit, but you only needed a quarter of a semester. So I only took it for a quarter, and then the rest I did like an independent study with my drama teacher.
I'm all for that. Would they let you do that all 4 years of high school?
No, I only needed it once.
And you were good for the whole
4 years of high school.
God, that's good for everybody.
I know, right? I couldn't even stand PE for 4 weeks.
Oh no, I remember the degradation of that. Somehow all the little gym uniforms had a smell to them, and then you just present yourself for whatever humiliation they were gonna. And it was always the football coaches that were running it, and it was just I didn't consider myself an athletic person, but there was something in it was like I don't know, it was like not dignified in some way.
So you do or don't consider yourself an athletic person?
I did. Now I'm just now
you're just gay, fat, and lazy.
I'm aspiring. I just wander through my life a little bit. Like the mind is still pretty good, but everything's a little creaky and overused. But we have this sick dog, and I've been thinking I haven't really worked out in about 7 months, I think, except going up and down the stairs and stuff. So it's kind
that
of
counts.
It's
walking the dog counts.
It does, but we walk pretty slowly, so it's a new state of physicality. Just wow, but anyway, it's good. Good to be alive.
What was your athleticism when you were a teenager?
I loved baseball. And I had a moment of being pretty good at it, and then I chickened out and quit. And then I came back a couple years later thinking, I could. And we got to the age where they're throwing curveballs, so I couldn't hit. And then when I got to high school,
you mean literal curveballs?
No literal curveballs. And so then in high school, I ran cross country and played tennis a little bit. And then I was really struck. We had these great looking varsity leather jackets that were early hoodies.
Ooh.
And I really wanted one. So I tried out for track. And by that time I'd been lifting weights and I'd gained some weight and couldn't run very fast. But I tried out for discus. And so a friend of mine who was pretty good at it showed me the basics. And I was like the 7th discus thrower, but I got the jacket. So that was cool.
Right. It doesn't matter. I don't know that you were the 7th, but if I see the picture of you in the Letterman jacket, that's all right. That matters.
Holding the discus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it
but
harder than it looks?
I can tell you a humiliation about that as well. So the outfit I got was a little too big, but I didn't want to make a stink. So with the discus, you throw the discus and then you jog out and retrieve it. So I did that, and as I was coming back, my foot caught on the pants and they dropped. And I fell over. And the coach, who was a really hard ass that I respected, I looked over at him from the ground, and he just was like laughing and shaking his head. Almost, okay, I'm not even going to say anything because that's self-punishment enough.
Oh, man. And that stuck with you.
Oh, no, it didn't. I totally forgot about it. I never even think about it.
It must be in a professional setting when the person who throws the thing doesn't have to run and get it.
Oh,
like
for
that,
sure.
That feels so unprofessional.
No, they have people. I'm sure they have people.
Right. Where are the people?
Yeah.
None of this surprises me about you. Knowing this like eclectic background you have. And I've listened to some of your interviews and I've read some of your interviews, and people always say, oh, you did all of these things. How did you become a writer? I don't want to know that because you've already answered that question.
Yeah.
But you've done, I will rattle them off because not everybody knows, a roofer, a doorman, a slaughterhouse knuckle puller, which I have questions about, a geophysical engineer. You worked in oil. What was your favorite?
I think the oil field stuff was pretty awesome because I was in Sumatra, and I was in a training program. So when they hired me, it was supposed to be a year in Sumatra in the rainforest. There's certain techniques that we'd use in that environment. And then I was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia to learn the desert environment, and then to Alaska for the Arctic. So for a young guy, that was like, wow, I just get to, travel. And also in those jobs, you're in super refined or unusual locations. Like in Sumatra, we were in rainforest that nobody had literally never set foot in. It was too dense. So that was cool. And at that time, it was the 80s, and I had a little conflict just about the way we were so American when we showed up, and we would trash the forest a little bit and we'd be boisterous. But the sort of climate change stuff hadn't really gotten onto my radar at that point. So to me, it was just an adventure, really. Yeah. And we'd do these crazy things like they'd helicopter us into the work site, and there'd be these villages that just looked like they were from thousands of years in the past. And people, at that time, I had more hair and it was blonde, and people would come up and just touch it. And it was like really a young person's dream of exotic foreign travel. We take these we had these computers that we'd have to actually take into the field, early computers. And I remember one moment when we had that thing, which was probably $100,000 instrument. We had it in one of those hand-carved sampan boats, whatever you call them, those kind of like really old school canoes. And we're just carefully using poles to take it down this river. So it was very Indiana Jones, so I love that one.
That's such an interesting juxtaposition too, right? This like handmade canoe carved out of a tree.
Yes.
And $100,000 computer that's sitting in it.
Yeah, and the other level is that computer ultimately was designed to find where their oil was and take it away from them. And and even then I noticed it, and I just thought, I heard one time a description, I think it was the writer Robert Stone, and he was talking about the difference, in his mind anyway, between beautiful and sublime. So beautiful is awesome to look at and virtuous, but sublime is awesome to look at and nebulous. This is my definition. He described watching an aerial bombardment of Vietnam. He was on a Coast Guard ship bombarding, and he knew that it was killing people, but the visual spectacle was so awe-inspiring. So I think a lot of times when I was in Asia, there were things I'm just like, wow, I didn't know the word yet, but sublime. It was just like some of those moments where your judgment just stops. You're like, fuck, whoa, okay. So I had a lot of those, and it was a good job.
What are some other sublime moments that come to mind?
I guess this is when I was in the slaughterhouse, and we had this. The knuckle pulling part is we would be standing there in this cold room, and a big cow leg would come by, look like a big drumstick. And then we were in a line, and each guy would step forward, and there was a certain series of cuts, and then there's a hook, and you have to put all your weight on it and pull it down, and then in the end, you get this sort of pot roast looking thing, and you go, wah, and you toss it onto a moving belt.
Okay.
And then you go around to the back of the line, and you do that for 8 straight hours. And there was kind of a weird, I don't know what it was, like racial organization. So in that particular group, it was all Mexican Americans and me. And then in other groups, like the fine cuts, a lot of Vietnamese guys were doing that. And it was just a really weird thing. But at one point, this guy, I'd been there a bit, and I got the name the college boy, which that's not one you particularly want. And this guy just, I don't know why even, he just pulled me aside and he suggested that I might want to perform a sexual act on him. Or he asked me if I did want to. I just went, no thanks. And then it went on. He was just testing me a little bit. And I was just struck by how I didn't have a pithy response except, thank you, we're at work for one thing. So that was another sublime moment where I saw my own, I don't know what you'd call it. It wasn't really, I didn't feel like I was afraid of him, but I just felt like I so don't want to be here that I don't even know what to say to you right now. You're so misunderstanding where we are and how you should be speaking to me, and because it was not a serious offer, he was trying to be insulting and
killer, and
yeah. So that's
another so interesting. One. Just because like when I think sublime, I don't think about it as perhaps being that simple. So that's really interesting to change the perspective on that.
Yeah, I don't think I would. That probably is, to call that sublime is a bit of a stretch. But I guess I'm talking a little bit about these moments where where your experience with the world and your way of thinking about it runs out. Oh, I'm in new territory here. I don't have a language for this. And so that young life, that all those jobs, it was full of all those kind of moments, and especially where my own flattering ideas about myself proved to not be valid. And that kind of sputtering thing that your mind does, like, but I thought I was heroic. I thought I was handsome, or I thought I was and then you're left there like in those cartoons when somebody walks off a cliff. Who am I then if I'm not entirely virtuous and correct?
Did you have a lot of those who am I moments as you're going from job to job? I imagine you're like, oh, if you establish yourself, listen, some of this is, don't have a therapy appointment this week. He's out of town.
I don't either, so we can.
Perfect. Some of this is obviously related to Vigil, the book that you're here to talk about, and just like life in general. Going from, my background is in theater, and I was not much of a reader until the last, 6 or 7 years ago. And so now just be in the book world, I do have this moment of who am I now?
Yeah.
And so I imagine going from a roofer where even if you're there as an apprentice, I don't know exactly what you were doing on the roof, but to go from that to a doorman, and to be a doorman in whether it's a building, a hotel, an apartment building, you have a front row seat to how the other half lives, because you have to, in order to have a doorman, you're paying a certain amount of money to be wherever you are.
Yeah.
To a slaughterhouse, I imagine there is this like weird identity.
There was also, I was really young. And so in that, I bounced from one to the next pretty well, because the background identity was always writer to be. So I had that thing where I could say, oh, this is degrading, but I'm storing it up for future use. And I didn't really have much invested in any of those jobs. It was always, from the time I was about probably 21, 22, I'm going to be a writer, and whatever happens to me, it's under that category, so let it rip. And so, there was always a double consciousness. There was the consciousness of something being a little beneath me at certain times, like a certain humiliation, but then at the same time going, but I'm taking note of this, so therefore it's not beneath me. And
also there's something to be said too about understanding who you are at your core, and then everything built upon that is bonus.
Yes. Yeah. And for me, I would say that at the core, as an occupation, it was writer. The other stuff, who I was as a person, was also pretty moving around a lot and being challenged, and because I went from being, I suppose, a Reagan person or Ayn Rand person in college, and then fell out of that pretty quickly. But always this tension between a working class background and a certain kind of, at least, aspiration to toughness and so on. And then, but also when I was a kid, a real Catholic, bleeding heart, progressive thing that was there. So all through my 20s, especially, there was that kind of push and pull between those two sides.
Related, you have described yourself as a Pollyanna in real life.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
It's partly, I think, and what I mean by that is I don't like conflict. And I tend to find the best in people, and am very conflict avoidant. And I don't like it when I make someone squirm or be uncomfortable. So I tend to duck from those situations, or assuage and placate comfort from the book. And I think that comes, partly it just feels dispositional, like I know I was like that as a little kid. And maybe too, like when, in the period that we're talking about, when these jobs were difficult and money was tight and all that, I think it's a time-honored working class approach to say, doesn't bother me. Like that puppy energy, like dog energy. I don't care. Sure, go ahead. And so I think there was some of that. Since I couldn't really, the difficulties were coming at a frequency and in a flavor that I couldn't quite, with my existing mind, I couldn't figure out. I didn't understand why they were happening. So in that situation, just to go, I don't care. I'll just deal with it. And I've seen that. I've seen that also when I went to the Trump rallies and covered those in 2016. That was I think that's a real undercurrent in the right wing, is this idea that let's not criticize or complain. Let's just get the job done. And that easily morphs over into an insensitivity to anybody else's viewpoint. But I think it's rooted, in me anyway, it was rooted in anxiety. You don't think you can cope, so you're not going to cope. You're just going to overpower. And that can be a really dangerous, as we're seeing, a really dangerous mindset. But I think if you trace it back down the way novelists would, you look at some of these people ostensibly running the show, and what I sense in them is of panic. How can I deal with the other? Oh my God, I don't have the basic confidence in my own compassion to enlarge myself and accept someone else's world. So therefore, you put up a fence and you shut down everything else, and that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially when they get the power to do it. In a normal world, they're just annoying. But when they get the power to do it, that anxiety, which I can understand, I can relate to it, but supersize it, and it becomes the obliteration of everything that's not them.
Yeah. Yeah. You, in telling the story about your youthful athleticism, there is I I made a face that came across as condescending and flippant.
No, I think it was very accurate. Very accurate. No.
You said that there were things that you did because you didn't want to make a stink. So that this is a thing that's clearly very deeply rooted in you. And what you're describing now, it could have gone in a different direction.
Yeah,
which is
I
interesting.
remember moments when there was some crossroads moments where it would have been easier to just get belligerent or double down on certain simplifying ideas. But luckily, when I look back at my life, there were just these people sprinkled through my life at certain times, like blessings, and they would be there at those, or at least in my memory, they'd be there in the crossroads moments, and you just go, yeah, no. Well, I had a high school teacher named Joel Lindblom who just passed away this year, and him and his wife Sherry were very powerful in that way. And I would often get into situations where I was a little confused and just literally think, what would the Lindbloms do? And then that would be like, okay, so you can afford to be a little more confident, you can afford to be a little more generous with somebody else, because I literally would just imagine them in that situation, the expressions on their face and their postures and stuff, and go, oh yeah, okay, no, we're okay. So that's a big thing. I think I don't hear about. That's something that I've only, maybe as an old fart who's finally getting a little smarter, I'm amazed by how many, like in It's a Wonderful Life, Clarence, how many Clarences I've had in my life, just showing up at certain moments to go, don't do that, or yeah.
It's funny that you bring all of this up. Obviously, I have questions about this later on in relation to the book, these figures in your life. Before we dive into the book, you it's also funny that you were talking about placating in relation to comfort, and you also said, as from the book, but placating and comforting in relation to the book, it's so different. But anyway, we'll get there in a minute.
Yeah.
You did all these jobs. We don't need to talk about how you became a writer. You talk about it. But I will say this is my 38th year. I'm turning 38 this year. And
Happy birthday.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just thrilled to know that you didn't publish your first book until you're 38. Not that I have aspirations of being a writer, but it is so inspiring, again, to know, oh, you are someone who's so prolific that people think of as this guy who's had a career his whole life, which is not untrue, but it did start a little later than I think people.
And it was a real
realize.
blessing, actually, to not have anything like that going on until that point, because our kids, well, they were before anything really noticeable happened, they were in school, and they knew me as
a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked about it a little. We've alluded to it a little. Well, tell the people, what is your elevator pitch for Vigil?
It's a wild ride. Trust me. No, it's basically, it's hard. Okay, so there's
I would say it could be,
please.
There's a sentence that you could pitch, right? We don't need to get into the nitty gritty.
Really bad guy is visited by a guardian angel at the end of his miserable life. Something like that. But also from the other angle, a really sweetheart of a ghost who died at 22 embarks on another day in her eternal life or something. I don't know. It's I don't know.
Yeah. Both of those things are true.
Yeah.
In relation to the book. There's something very Shakespearean about it.
Oh, I'll go with that. We'll put that on the front cover.
Does that mean anything to you? Does that resonate with you?
Oh, yeah. I had, in this transition period between not writing and writing, I went to West Texas State University, and there was I'd come back from the oil fields, and I was been beatniking around, and so I thought, I'm going to be a high school teacher of English. So I went back to get some credits, and I took a class, and I'm blanking on her name, but she was a magnificent teacher of Shakespeare. And I took her class on the comedies in the fall, and it blew my mind because under her guidance, I could read him. I could understand him. And so at that point, I thought, that's the high water mark. And so, I'm always trying to get that. That relates to what we talked about earlier, that moment of what we call sublime, where the world presents to you in a way that's so new and so foreign to your conceptual system that it stuns you into silence. So in a literary sense, if you can do that, you're mimicking the universe. If you're reading my book and you go, what? That's similar to you walking through a train station and suddenly seeing an elephant. And so that's the thing I think about with Shakespeare, is that you don't feel him in there. You don't know what his politics were. You don't know much about him, but you feel the universe coming through him. So I definitely aspire to that kind of, I guess, ambiguity or something. Or
It's funny. Some of his plays, I would argue, you can very clearly understand his politics. But I think there is this element of coalescing when it's his words, his ideas, and your understanding of it really come together, that you have this sublime moment, whether these things are what the fuck is going on, or you at least can understand the elf in the train station or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said it, because I think a lot of people are going to read this book and be like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh, yeah. No, hey, can I ask, did you act in Shakespeare when you were in theater?
I didn't.
You didn't. I would love to try that, but it would have to be just one line because I couldn't memorize. But I often wondered what those plays are like from the inside. To read them is one thing, or even to see them, but to be in them, I always wondered what that would be like for the performer. Must be wonderful.
It's, I didn't perform in Shakespeare, but there's something, I compare it sometimes to opera, and frankly, a perhaps slightly absurd book. It's about a feeling, right? It's not necessarily about the specific words, and the words that you are getting and understanding might be a punch in the gut. They might be a hilarious turn of phrase, but so much of it is about a vibe, right? And I think that's true about opera. You can go and watch an opera, not understand a lick of the actual lyrics,
Right.
but you can be sobbing at the end because the emotion is so palpable. And I think that to be true of Shakespeare, where I've seen my fair share of Shakespeare plays, and plenty of times I have no idea exactly what's being said.
Yeah.
But you catch a turn of phrase or you feel the emotion,
Right.
and it's very clear.
Well, and there's also that idea that language, we think, especially now in this hyper rational age, that language and meaning have a very close linear relationship. But in some of those speeches, the flood of language, as you're suggesting, it makes a feeling that you're catching bits of. That's the meaning. That's it. So language can do a lot more than we give it. We put it in a little business suit and tie and say, explain reality, but it wants to sing. So language.
And
wants to
also,
sing.
I have seen and read Twelfth Night a dozen times. Every single time I experience it in a different way.
Yeah.
The text has not changed.
I think that's a consequence of something that the writer does to make the thing so, I want to say airtight, but it's not. It's more about, it's self-referential in the most coherent way. It's almost like if you make a really beautiful snow globe, and you look at it from all different, or a model railroad town, let's say, that's probably better. Make that with great precision and care, then anybody can look at it from any angle on any day, and it's a different town, basically.
A different town. And frankly, if you're looking at it from one side of the table, you see one thing. On the other side of the table, you see something else. And you could zoom in on the one house.
Yeah.
And then zoom out.
And it's all true at once. That's the other part.
I started reading Vigil, and I got about a quarter of the way through. And I was like, I am curious what the audiobook is like, because I had access to the audiobook. So I then started from the beginning, and I love reading and listening to books simultaneously. Talk about perspective changing. It became a different story when I listened to the audiobook while reading it simultaneously.
That's Judy Greer reading it, right?
The incredibly talented Judy Greer, who graduated from the same theater school that I went to.
Oh, nice. Yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing.
And then I was like, okay, where's the George Saunders play? When are we seeing this on stage? Starring Judy Greer. I need it to happen.
I need it to happen also. So call your friends in the theater and make that
exactly. But no, it just was interesting, the different flavors and the different experiences that you have from, I started it in the morning and I changed my method in the afternoon, and it was a completely different experience.
Wow.
Okay, so now I've complimented you by saying the Shakespeare part, and I don't mean this to not be a compliment, but I'm going to tell you a bit of the soup that Vigil was for me.
Okay.
And I'm curious your response / it is Shakespeare meets
and Motley Crue.
Shakespeare meets Jacob Marley
Yep.
meets the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, the Christmas Carol thing for sure. But although I only realized halfway through, because that's my favorite book of all time. And I think I could say that almost every story I've ever written is coming out of that a little bit.
Why?
Sure. You know why? Actually, because one reason is it was one of the first works of art that nailed me, and it was on TV in the Mr. Magoo version. You know, and there was a version of this in the 60s, and I was in somebody's house, and it was on. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I didn't know from Dickens. I didn't know it was a book. I just thought, oh, my God. And that moment when the death figure comes out and points at his grave, and Mr. Magoo goes, oh, spirit, please. But it was something. And actually, if I wanted to get deep, I think that and the Charlie Brown holiday specials were really formative for me, because especially that Christmas one, because you get the silliness of the cartoon and Mr. Magoo, who, like, you know what, and then you get the profundity of the moral, ethical stuff coming through in that weird, brightly colored wrapper. And I love that. I love the idea of, with the left hand making a silly puppet show and the right hand, boom, Tolstoy, that kind of combo. But the Tooth Fairy, tell me that part, I'm not quite sure.
It's funny. I think the Tooth Fairy part for me is the Mr. Magoo coming through that I didn't realize. Because there is particularly hearing Judy's interpretation, there is this like mythical, magical female creature. And that to me is the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
Obviously.
No, it's true. And she comes there to help.
Right.
Yeah. No, I love that.
So that's the dash of that. But hearing Mr. Magoo, it's also very interesting. That's your experience with A Christmas Carol, because I'm of a generation where our experience with A Christmas Carol is the Muppets.
We saw that at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica last year.
Oh, how fun.
Incredible. Yeah.
Because it's a wonderful movie, and it's not dissimilar from what you're describing, where it's like you have the Muppets, which is inherently whimsical, and you have Michael Caine giving an Oscar-worthy performance.
Yeah.
Taking it so seriously, and not seriously is actually the wrong word. Right. Taking it honestly.
Yeah, honestly. We did I taught this class at Syracuse, and I did it on the Story Club, the subsect that I have. And I think one of the reasons that thing holds up so well is it's structured like you can't believe. I was amazed. It was almost like I looked at a toy watch and hit it, and it opened into a Rolex. The inner mechanics of that thing are just perfect. You could study it for a long time. Yeah.
Back to me wanting to see a George Saunders play, I would see your stage adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Just putting it out there.
It would just be the same. I would just type it out because you can't do any better. And you can always see when somebody tries to improve on Dickens, it doesn't. Even when we saw the Muppets, I love that movie now. But when I first saw it, I was a bit of a purist. I'm like, that's not what he says.
A bit of a purist coming from a guy who is deeply rooted in the Mr. Magoo version.
Mr. Magoo, yeah.
Something about perspective. Right. What is A Christmas Carol through the perspective of George Saunders? And that is what I actually find to be compelling. Right. Anyway.
I think there's another like cluster of stories that if you'd asked me at the beginning, I would have referenced as being of writing the book, which was Master and Man by Tolstoy, and which is a story in which a guy, he dies and he's a shithead. And at the very end, there's something like a transformation. And then Death of Ivan Ilyich by Tolstoy, also same deal. And then on the counter side, there is this beautiful story called The Jilting of Granny Weatherall. Do you know that? It's Catherine Ann Porter. And oh my God, it's such an unsentimental look at the last minutes of somebody's life. And a woman has had a trauma in her young life that she spent her whole life denying. And at the end, poor dear, it comes rushing back and dominates her death. So intense. And then the Flannery O'Connor, that A Good Man Is Hard to Find, where same thing, somebody at the end of their life has a change of heart. And that's the one with a great line in it. She'd have been a good woman if there'd been somebody there to shoot her every day of her life. So when I'm working, there's usually a little cluster of other works around my head.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, I see you there. Let me try to wedge in there and do something a little new that you guys haven't done. So that's just an aspiration especially as you get near the end.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
What was the relationship like between you and your life in writing the book? And what I mean by that is like, a lot of reflecting on one's life on their deathbed. You know?
That's really interesting. The main thing too, one is the KJ Boone character, who's an oil CEO. I definitely drew on those early oil field, not the experiences so much, but the feeling of being part of a team being part of a sort of reviled team. Because even in the 80s, I knew that the people just then beginning to watch MTV wouldn't think well of an oil guy. I knew that. So there's a little bit of that, oh, you don't understand what we do, that kind of feeling. And also the feeling of adventure. So that's why that was me and him. And then with Jill, there was, in our family, we lost a couple of people young, and in the 70s or early 80s. And as I'm getting older, it just really strikes you how much those people missed out on, like in the intervening years. And so I had a lot of feeling for her in that sense, somebody whose life was truncated. And then, that was, those two were my life for sure. Yeah. And then there is, I guess, some 67 in pretty good health generally, although I'm not athletic, I have to say, as you might know.
Anymore.
Or probably not even then. I almost never run and my pants fall down. It just happens. I just stand there and they fall.
Well, that's just called convenience.
I went to a doctor a couple of years ago and I said, I feel pretty good, but I can't keep my pants up. He goes, prescription is suspenders. I'm like, oh, suspenders. But
These are solutions, George.
Yeah, but on a more serious note, you do. I'm for sure at this age, you start to look a little bit at what you've done, and the kind of staggering truth is, none of it fucking matters, except the personal stuff does. But in terms of accomplishment and so on, you can see that the world could change on a dime and render you completely irrelevant, easily. So all those hours of struggle, they have to be fun for themselves, or it's not anything. Then also, I think you look back and I'm a little bit OCD and in this self-accusatory way, so I can do a really good job of something and afterwards and go, I fucked it up, or regret the one thing I shouldn't have said. No? So looking back at your life in that mode is dangerous, because you can, on certain days, you look back and that is a pattern of missed opportunities to have been a bigger person or a kinder person or a more generous person. So that's a little dangerous, because it's actually just, it's mind. It's my habitual mind. But again, that came in handy for the book, because he's there and he's really trying to resist that by a lot of different methods. And when he unravels at the end, that was really interesting to work through that sequence. Okay, if a person should feel guilty and doesn't, what are the steps on that progression from complete denial to complete openness? What are the,
I'm pulling two quotes from what you just said and putting it on the Gaze Reading website. One is, none of it fucking matters. And the other is, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Just my little pull quote from George Saunders. Do you remember the childhood smells from your kitchen growing up?
I would recognize them. I can't recreate them, but I think there's one actually. My grandmother lived in Amarillo, Texas, and we go down there every summer for 2 weeks. And she had, I remember the smell of, I think it was the wood of the cabinets, but blended with, she would make this sweet iced tea that was unbelievable. She'd make it in the morning and we'd have it all day. And it was always on the stove, and it was just like so much sugar. I have a memory of her pouring it in, and it was the best to be down there in just a sweltering Texas summer, and there was always iced tea. So that smell permeated that. Yeah. Do you remember yours? Be funny if you just went, no.
I don't know that I do. I bring it up because it comes up in the book.
Yeah.
For me, it's less about, my parents weren't big cooks. Mm-hmm. There are sense memories that I will get from my childhood in relation to growing up. Like, my dad would do a lot of building and woodworking. And so the smell of sawdust or burning wood, or you smell wood, and that to me brings me back to my childhood. I remember what my dad's warehouse smelled. But like that.
Do you know the writer Mary Carr? She's a friend of ours, brilliant, one of the best memoirists in the world. And I'll probably mess this up, but we taught together one time in Greece, and she gave us this exercise that has to do, and it's in her book called The Art of Memoir, if I mess it up. But she basically says, okay, sit quietly, do a little silent kind of meditation. And then I think the order is you locate yourself somewhere in your childhood, a particular room. And she lets you sit there a bit. And she says, what do you hear? What are you wearing? What do you see? And I think it ends with smell, I think. And then the very last thing is, what do you want? And I consider myself in some ways, a kind of a rigid person. And that one broke me open. I had myself in for some reason, a walk-in freezer at this restaurant my dad used to own. I came. She said, "Whatever comes in your mind first." I did that.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I remembered I had this really weird hippie suede floral belt that I used to wear, which I totally forgotten about. That had gotten from working in that restaurant, had gotten kind of grease saturated. And I could remember the exact feeling of that. A really powerful thing. But the trick, I think, was the gradualness and the sequence that she identified by which to invoke the senses went from easy to hard, but also the smell was really deep. And it was not so much by that time recalling, but the brain was going, oh, sure, we have that. And boom, it was really something.
Yeah. The sense memories in general, I find fascinating and just a very cool experience to have, to be really transported to something specific because of a smell, because of a taste. There is this interesting concept that comes up in the book that exactly what you're describing is making me understand it a little bit more, in that our imaginations can unlock or unblock truths.
Say a little more.
I don't think this is not giving anything away from the book, but there are figures from the past that are visiting our protagonist that may or may not be real. They might or may not be the spirits of these humans or these things coming in to pay a visit, but our imagination is deciding that they are.
Yes.
Whether they are or not.
I see, yeah. And actually, in this book, I could make a list. There are some who are coming from within his psyche and some who are actually sent.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So the fun thing was when the ones that were coming from his psyche were always, they were actually his divided psyche debating with himself.
Right.
Yeah. So that was interesting to discover that as a tool.
But I imagine the exercise that you just described, it is a tool as well, grappling with your history, right? Why did you go into that freezer?
Yes. And yes, exactly right. And especially when you get to the question, what do you want? Because one of Mary's things, and she writes about this so beautifully, is that if I ask you about your childhood, you have a constructed version of it now as an adult that you have practiced. And every time, and neuroscientists tell us, every time you take a memory out, when you put it back, you change it. You change it to put it in compliance with your current worldview slightly. Boom. So when we say, I remember my childhood, we really don't, actually. And one of the things this exercise did for me was it let me, all kinds of frequencies and overtones came in from the side that I would never in a million years have either remembered or validated. And you go, holy shit, the person that I was in 1976 was just as three-dimensional as the person I am now. I just can't remember that.
Right.
So I say, oh, I was a little bit of a macho kid. Yes and no. If I could drop into my mind at that point, you go, oh, God, there's a million things going on in here. So that's part of, I think, the dilemma of being a human being is you're looking in the past and you're trying to learn from it, but you're not very good at constructing it, actually. The brain is a very limited kind of model maker. And so based on, and actually even in the present moment, you walk into a restaurant and your mind struggles to put that together. And those projections that we make are dangerous because we mistake them for the real deal.
Just yesterday, I was updating files in my Google Drive, and they were old relatively. And I was like, oh, what are some of the oldest ones that I'm curious to look at and edit a tiny bit or just lay eyes on? Right. I would look, okay, last updated January of 2021. Okay, I'll click into it. Touch not a thing, but I will see what's in there, and it automatically now says last updated January 2026.
That's it. Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're describing. It's, oh, I'm putting it back on the shelf, a different thing than it was.
Right. And maybe the slight adjustment to that metaphor was if you were reading this writing and kind of going, he got that wrong, and changing it, you would never say that and change it, and then you put it back. And Yeah. So it's interesting because it reminds me of that Russian writer Gogol, because Gogol has that quality of understanding that our perceptions are just comically inadequate. And also the ideas we make from them are pretty rickety too. So that puts you in a strange position where you have to act, you have to be a person, but the data flow coming in is wonky all the time. We're finding this out. I mentioned we have a sick dog, and as she's old, she's 13 and a half. And so we'll get into a situation where she seems to be on the decline and it looks like the end. And then it turns out she had this week a UTI. That didn't occur to us because the narrative we were telling ourselves was our dog is dying.
Yeah.
So I think life is full of those kinds of things. And for me, to come back, fiction is a way of at least identifying that in yourself. You put your projections on the page, and then you mess with them and you wallow in them and see what the tendency of your mind is, maybe something like that.
So early on, we were talking about comfort, and the book, I think, talks about comfort in a lot of different ways, including our friend Jill coming to perhaps comfort our dying protagonist. But I'm curious, does reflecting on the past, does changing your perspective provide you comfort?
Only if it's honest. If it's honest, then it's not always pleasant. But if I look back at something and go, yeah, you fucked that up, that comforts me, as opposed to, no, I didn't. It's all good. That isn't true, as I'm saying. So I think the comfort would just be, and actually this is, you put your finger on it. The fundamental thing of the book that I didn't plan but found was she thinks she's comforting him by saying, everything's fine, you're perfect. And she has a pretty good argument for that, which I actually believe. But in the meantime, there's this other character, this Frenchman, who is taking a different tack, which is to say, you are evil, you better confess. But you know that you did bad. Wake up. If you don't, the end's going to be very difficult for you. So he has more of a tough love kind of perspective.
Right.
So I think if I look back at my past with any quality of denial, I think that makes it worse. It's impossible not to. You do it without knowing it, I think. But if I can think about something, yeah, I definitely messed that up. Then, okay, people do, and maybe next time you do better. Yeah. But this question of what comfort consists of is the thing that's through the book. And what I loved about writing the book was I got to the end less sure about it than I was when I started. Yeah.
And not to lean into the comfort metaphor, I think you saying that will bring comfort to readers who say, I didn't get it, or I don't understand. And there's something to be said about picking it back up and pulling something and looking at the model train from a different perspective.
Yeah. And I think one of the ideas that might be helpful is that Chekhov said art doesn't have to solve a problem, it has to formulate it correctly. Yeah. So I think in contemporary world, we often think that fiction exists to give us a moral message. But in my way of thinking now, a higher level moral message is the confusion and ambiguity that comes from having two people in opposition, or maybe in this case 4 or 5 or 6, arguing, but all at a high level.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what that does to you, as in the sublime discussion, it stops your judging mind a little bit. And you're like, oh, wow, I usually judge way too early. Boom, I'm confused. And I would say, you're not confused, you're just letting in all the data. So stay there as long as you can, and then later you can go back to your judging life. So I think for me, that's what great art does. It just reminds me that the person I normally am is a simpleton and is always trying to judge things, always thinks he's right, always thinks his perceptions are 100% correct. And you read something by Tolstoy or Chekhov especially, and you just go, oh, wow, that guy's a baby. Or to say more positively, I have a lot more capability to abide with things than I thought I did. And again, to go back to the political thing, the one thing I will say as an unrepentant left-winger left of Gandhi is we are pretty good at abiding with people's phenomenon and saying, if that's how it is for you, I bless it. I have to bless it. And even if it makes me a little nervous, I'm going to work with that because it's not your fault that so I think that's something I think is vanishing, and especially on the right, there's a lot of just absolute rejection of other people's phenomenon, which that's so anti-American that you can't live with that.
So this episode is coming out on Pub Day, so end of January, and in a few weeks, I'm in conversation on the podcast with an author named Patmina Sabet, whose book, Good People, will have just come out, and it's terrific, but we have a really interesting conversation about what it means to be good. And it is an extension of exactly what we're talking about. So listeners, you have that to look forward to in a few weeks.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll find that book.
before I'm going to take us behind a little paywall in a second to hear some book recommendations from the one and only George Saunders. But before we do that, I have to know, since this book is all about death and dying and your deathbed, what would your final meal be?
Infinity pills that suspend death forever.
No.
No, you have to do that because then you don't
I reject that answer.
Okay, all right. Oh, we talk about accepting other people's no. Okay, I would honestly, because it's a cheeseburger, but the problem is, I suspect that when you're about to die, you don't feel so good. A single green bean, please. That's all I want.
Right, that's the only thing your body will be able to handle.
Yeah.
Okay, where's the cheeseburger from?
I don't know.
Or who's making it? What makes it special?
It's just an regular old simple cheeseburger from where would it be? Out here, I think Shake Shack does pretty good. I like that. Very simple. But okay, all right, since I get to ask, it would be from my dad's restaurant that we had in Chicago in the late 70s, and I would make it because I can make a killer cheeseburger on our grill. Yeah. So you'll need a time travel machine, and then I'll make the world's best cheeseburger. And
I love a cheeseburger. How do you like it cooked?
Medium rare, and then just like basic lettuce, tomato, mustard, mayo, and pickles. That's it. Just
pickles. Pickles. Yeah. You took me out.
Yeah.
What kind of cheese?
American. Is that right? Yeah.
All right.
And the funny thing is,
for me, it's cheddar.
Okay, we can. It's your death. You can do it. But it's funny.
Now I'm just debating the perfect cheeseburger. So
they're all. It's funny because I have had, when I was in Asia, I got sick. I swam in a river I shouldn't have. So much. I had all kinds of issues in my 20s with digestion. But the one thing that I can eat with just bliss is a cheeseburger for some reason. And so I think it's your system just goes, oh, that. Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah, I accept that.
Yeah.
What a good answer. Everyone, go get your copy of Vigil by George Saunders. It's going to make you ask a lot of questions and maybe or maybe not give you answers the first go around. Listen to the audiobook. It's stellar. And head on over to the Gaze Reading Substack to hear some book recommendations. Thank you for being here, George.
It's a pleasure. So much fun.